I am sharing with you an article by Rebecca Solnit. It appears at TomDispatch.com. A rape a minute, 1,000 corpses a year, hate crimes in America and elsewhere. I thought it was appropriate to share this tonight, given the fact that there were 22 members of the United States Senate, including Marco Rubio, who yesterday voted against extending the Violence Against Women Act. Who has the right to kill you? Well, maybe you're tired of statistics, so let's just talk about a single incident that happened in my city a couple of weeks ago. One of many local incidents in which men assaulted women that made the local papers this month. Quote, a woman was stabbed after she rebuffed a man's sexual advances while she walked in San Francisco's Tenderloin neighborhood late Monday night, a police spokesman said today. The 33-year-old victim was walking down the street when a stranger approached her and propositioned her. Police spokesman Officer Albie Esperanza said. When she rejected him, the man became very upset and slashed the victim in the face and stabbed her in the arm, end quote. The man, in other words, framed the situation as one in which his chosen victim had no rights or liberties, while he had the right to control and punish her. This should remind us that violence is first of all authoritarian. It begins with this premise: I have the right to control you. Murder is the extreme version of that authoritarianism, where the murderer asserts he has the right to decide whether you live or die, the ultimate means of controlling someone. This may be true even if you are obedient, because the desire to control comes out of a rage that obedience can't assuage. Whatever fears, whatever sense of vulnerability may underlie such behavior, it also comes out of entitlement, the entitlement to inflict suffering and even death on other people. It breeds misery in the perpetrator and the victims. As for that incident in my city, similar things happen all the time. Many versions of it happened to me when I was younger, sometimes involving death threats and often involving torrents of obscenities. A man approaches a woman with both desire and the furious expectation that the desire will likely be rebuffed. The fury and desire come in a package, all twisted together into something that always threatens to turn eros into thanatos, love into death, sometimes literally. It's a system of control. It's why so many intimate partner murders are of women who dared to break up with those partners. As a result, it imprisons a lot of women. And though you could say that the attacker on January 7th, or a brutal would-be rapist near my own neighborhood on January 5th, or another rapist here on January 12th, or the San Franciscan who on January 6th set his girlfriend on fire for refusing to do his laundry, or the guy who was just sentenced to 370 years for some particularly violent rapes in San Francisco in late 2011, were all marginal characters. Rich, famous, and privileged guys do it, too. The Japanese vice consul in San Francisco was charged with 12 felony counts of spousal abuse and assault with a deadly weapon last September, the same month that in the same town, the ex-girlfriend of Mason Meyer, the brother of Yahoo CEO Marissa Meyer, Mason Meyer, the ex-girlfriend of Mason Meyer, testified in court, quote, he ripped out my earrings, tore my eyelashes off, spitting in my face and telling me how unlovable I am. I was on the ground in the fetal position, and when I tried to move, he squeezed both knees tighter into my sides to restrain me, and he slapped me. According to the newspaper, she also testified that Meyer slammed her head onto the floor repeatedly and pulled out clumps of her hair, telling her that the only way she was leaving the apartment alive was if he drove her to the Golden Gate Bridge, where you can, quote, jump off. I will push you off. Mason Meyer, the perpetrator of all this, got probation. This summer, an estranged husband violated his wife's restraining order against him, shooting her and 6 other women at her spa job in suburban Milwaukee. But since there were only 4 corpses, the crime was largely overlooked in the media in a year with so many more spectacular mass murders in this country. And we still haven't really talked about the fact that of 62 mass shootings in the United States in 3 decades, only 1 was by a woman. Because when you say lone gunman, everybody talks about loners and guns, but not about men. Oh, and by the way, nearly 2/3 of all women killed by guns are killed by their partner or ex-partner. What's love got to do with it? Asked Tina Turner, whose ex-husband, Ike, once said, "Yeah, I hit her, but I didn't hit her more than the average guy beats his wife." A woman is beaten every 9 seconds in this country. Just to be clear, not 9 minutes, but 9 seconds. It's the number one cause of injury to American women. Of the 2 million women injured annually, more than 500,000 of those injuries require medical attention, while about 145,000 require overnight hospitalizations, according to the Center for Disease Control. And you don't want to know about the dentistry needed afterwards. Spouses are also the leading cause of death for pregnant women in the United States. Women worldwide, ages 15 through 44, are more likely to die or be maimed because of male violence than because of cancer, malaria, war, and traffic accidents combined, writes Nicholas Kristof, one of the few prominent figures to address the issue regularly. Rape and other acts of violence, up to and including murder, as well as threats of violence, constitute the barrage some men lay down as they attempt to control some women. And fear of that violence limits most women in ways they've gotten so used to they hardly notice, and we hardly address. There are exceptions. Last summer, someone wrote to me to describe a college class in which the students were asked what they do to stay safe from rape. The young women described the intricate ways they stayed alert, limited their access to the world, took precautions, and essentially thought about rape all the time, while the young men in the class gaped in astonishment. The chasm between their worlds had briefly and suddenly become visible. Mostly, however, we don't talk about it, though a graphic has been circulating on the Internet called Top 10 Tips to End Rape. The kind of thing young women get often enough, but this one had a subversive twist. It offered advice like this: carry a whistle. If you are worried you might assault someone by accident, you can hand it to the person you are with so they can call for help. While funny, the piece points out something terrible. The usual guidelines in such situations puts the full burden of prevention on potential victims, treating the violence as a given. You explained to me why colleges spend more time telling women how to survive predators than telling the other half of their students not to be predators. Threats of sexual assault now seem to take place online regularly. In late 2011, British columnist Laurie Penny wrote, quote, "An opinion, it seems, is the short skirt of the Internet. Having one and flaunting it is somehow asking an amorphous mass of almost entirely male keyboard bashers to tell you how they'd like to rape, kill, and urinate on you. This week, after a particularly ugly slew of threats, I decided to make just a few of those messages public on Twitter, and the response I received was overwhelming. Many could not believe the hate I received, and many more began to share their own stories of harassment, intimidation, and abuse." End quote. Women in the online gaming community have been harassed, threatened, and driven out. Anita Sarkeesian, a feminist media critic who documented such incidents, received support for her work, but also, in the words of a journalist, quote, "another wave of really aggressive, violent personal threats." Her accounts attempted to be hacked, and one man in Ontario took the step of making an online video game where you could punch Anita's image on the screen, and if you punched it multiple times, bruises and cuts would appear on her image, end quote. The difference between these online gamers and the Taliban men who last October tried to murder 14-year-old Malala Yousafzai for speaking out about the right of Pakistani women to education is one of degree. Both are trying to silence and punish women for claiming voice, power, and the right to participate. Welcome to Manistan. It's not just public or private or online either. It's also embedded in our political system and our legal system, which before feminists fought for us didn't recognize most domestic violence or sexual harassment and stalking or date rape or acquaintance rape or marital rape, and in cases of rape still often tries the victim rather than the rapist, as though only perfect maidens could be assaulted or believed. As we learned in the 2012 election campaign, it's also embedded in the minds and mouths of our politicians. Remember that spate of crazy pro-rape things Republican men said last summer and fall, starting with Todd Akin's notorious claim that a woman has ways of preventing pregnancy in cases of rape, a statement he made in order to deny women control over their own bodies. After that, of course, Senate Republican candidate Richard Mourdock claimed that rape pregnancies were, quote, a gift from God. And just this month, another Republican politician piped up to defend Akin's comment. More in a moment.
As long as there's business first, toe to toe, touch and go, give a cheer, get your souvenir.